Kyrie, at 38 years old, with a modest but steady income of $72,000 a year from his small business, came home to find his life packed into 6 heavy-duty trash bags on the front lawn. It was June 12, 2019, which year 2024, at exactly 6:17 p.m. A warm, humid Memphis evening was turning sour as the sky bruised to a deep purple, threatening a summer storm. The first fat drops of rain began to fall, splattering against the black plastic of the bags, each one a dark punctuation mark on the end of his marriage. His world, his comfort, his shared history with the woman inside the house, all of it was sitting there on the perfectly manicured grass of their East Memphis home. A home with a market value of $1.2 million that he had helped pay for. Inside one bag, he could see the sleeve of his favorite $120 J. Crew wool sweater. A Christmas gift from 2 years ago, already darkening with moisture. His collection of vinyl records, probably worth $3,000, was in another, their cardboard sleeves surely warping in the humidity. His worn leather briefcase, a $300 gift from his late father, was tossed near the curb like actual garbage. The rain began to fall harder now, a steady, relentless drumming that seemed to mock his paralysis. He stood on the sidewalk, his keys still in his hand, looking at the wreckage of his personal life displayed for the whole neighborhood to see. The door to the house opened, and his wife, Latrice, stepped out onto the porch. She was a vision of cold control, her deep brown skin luminous even in the dying light. She wore a white silk blouse, likely one of her $800 ones from Lafayette 148, and she held a glass of what looked like expensive wine. She didn't come down the steps. She just stood there, under the protection of the awning, watching him get soaked. "What is this, Latrice?" His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper against the sound of the rain. "It's over, Kyrie," she said, her tone as crisp and sterile as a legal document. "I can't do this anymore. I can't be tied to a man with such small dreams." His small dreams were Kay's Secure Storage, a small but profitable business he'd built from the ground up on a piece of industrial land his grandfather had left him. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his. It was the foundation he thought they were building on. He looked from her cold, impassive face to the bags, then back again. The rain was plastering his thin work shirt to his skin. He felt a profound and chilling emptiness spread through his chest, colder than the rainwater soaking through his $89 Timex watch. He had no idea how wrong he was about what was truly happening. The bags on the lawn were just the beginning of the devastation. Have you ever felt completely blindsided by someone you trusted with your entire world? It's a pain that goes deeper than just surprise. It feels like the very ground you stand on has dissolved into nothing. We'd love to hear about a time you had to find strength you didn't know you had. Share your story in the comments below, because your journey of resilience could be the inspiration someone else needs to see today. The facade of their life had been so meticulously constructed, it was almost convincing, even to him. Their life was a series of beautifully framed photographs of domestic normalcy, each one carrying a hidden and often lopsided price tag. Just 6 months prior, on a bright Saturday in January, he'd spent the morning installing a new garbage disposal in their kitchen sink. The unit cost $225 from Home Depot, and he'd spent 3 hours on his back under the sink, knuckles scraped and back aching, while Latrice was at a brunch with her friends at the Beauty Shop restaurant in Cooper Young, a bill that likely came to over $150 for her share alone. When she came home, she didn't thank him. She just wrinkled her nose at the smell of pipe sealant and said, "Is that finished? I want to order from Erling Jensen tonight." That dinner, a celebratory meal for her recent promotion at a marketing firm, cost them $350. Paid for from their joint account, an account he contributed to far more consistently than she did. He remembered their 3rd anniversary. He had planned a simple, romantic evening. He bought a beautiful $80 bouquet of lilies from a local florist on Poplar Avenue and cooked her favorite meal, salmon with roasted asparagus. He even bought a $60 bottle of Veuve Clicquot, a splurge for him. He set the table on their back patio, overlooking the garden he spent every other weekend maintaining. When Latrice saw it, her smile was thin, tight. "This is cute, Kyrie," she'd said, the word cute landing like a small, sharp stone. "You know, Kendra's husband took her to Paris for their anniversary. He just closed a 7-figure deal." She'd spent the rest of the dinner scrolling through her phone, showing him pictures of the Eiffel Tower, the glitter of the city lights a stark contrast to the quiet candles he had lit. The salmon grew cold on their plates. The financial disparities were a constant, humming beneath the surface of their marriage. Her closet was a shrine to luxury brands. A row of Christian Louboutin shoes, each pair costing upwards of $900, sat pristine on custom-built shelves. A $4,200 Chanel handbag, which he'd paid for as a birthday gift after she'd dropped hints for months, was displayed on her dresser like a museum piece. Meanwhile, his side of the closet was filled with shirts from Kohl's, most bought on sale for under $50, and a single suit he'd owned for 5 years. He drove a 2018 Ford F-150, fully paid off, a practical vehicle for his business. She drove a brand new white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 car with a monthly lease payment of $580 that came directly from their shared finances. She called his business "your little hobby" or "that dusty lot." She never once visited the facility on the outskirts of Memphis, the one he was so proud of. He tried to explain his vision to her, his plans for expansion, for creating a logistics hub. He'd shown her spreadsheets, projections, the slow but steady growth of his client base. She would just pat his hand condescendingly. "That's nice, honey," she'd say, her eyes already glazing over. "Just make sure you're home in time to let the cleaning service in." The cleaning service cost $200 every 2 weeks. He was the one who remembered to leave the check. He had no idea that every dollar he deposited, every act of service he performed, was simply funding the construction of a life that was never meant to include him. He was just the scaffolding, to be kicked away once the structure was complete. The cruelty of that evening on the lawn escalated with a speed that left him breathless. After her pronouncement about his small dreams, Kyrie finally moved, his feet feeling like lead weights. He walked up the stone pathway, the rain sluicing off his face, and reached for the doorknob. It was locked. He looked at her, his expression a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. "You can't come in, Kyrie," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "My lawyer advised me against it." "Your lawyer? What are you talking about? This is my house, too." She gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Not anymore. I'm sorry you have to find out this way, but the paperwork was finalized last week. The house is solely in my name. A post-nuptial agreement you signed 2 years ago." He stared at her, his mind reeling. He remembered the stack of papers she'd put in front of him one night, calling them just some routine financial planning documents. She'd said her new job required it for tax purposes. He'd been tired after a 16-hour day of resurfacing the asphalt at his storage facility, a job that saved him $15,000 by doing it himself. He had trusted her. He had signed where she'd pointed, the fine print a blur to his exhausted eyes. The casualness of her deception was what struck him the most. It was a betrayal that had been planned and executed over months, maybe even years. "The accounts," he started, a new wave of panic rising in his throat. "Our savings are also secured," she finished for him, taking a delicate sip of her wine. "For my protection, you understand?" He didn't understand. He felt a desperate need to verify it, to see the damage for himself. He pulled out his phone, his fingers clumsy and slick with rain. He opened his banking app. The joint savings account, which just that morning had held a balance of $93.42, The sum of his life's work, his inheritance, his careful planning, now read 0.0 zeros. It had been emptied that afternoon, transferred to an account he didn't recognize. He felt the air leave his lungs in a painful rush. She hadn't just left him. She had hollowed him out, taking every last dollar he had. He looked up at her, a silent plea in his eyes. He was hoping to see a flicker of remorse, of regret, of the woman he had married. He saw nothing but a cool assessment. "My mother is coming over," she said, as if discussing the weather. "It's best if you and your things are gone before she arrives. It would be awkward." The final blow came when he asked for his truck keys. "I need to get my things," he said, his voice cracking. "I need my truck." Latrice swirled the wine in her glass. "About that," she said. "The F-150 was also part of the asset allocation. The title was in both our names, and I've already had it transferred. It's mine now. You can call an Uber." She turned then, without another word, and walked back into the warm, dry light of the house, closing the heavy oak door behind her with a soft, final click. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, broken only by the relentless rain. He was left alone in the dark, standing over the soaked and ruined remnants of his life with an empty bank account, no vehicle, and no home. He sank to his knees on the wet grass, the humiliation of physical weight pressing down on him. At 6:47 p.m., Kyrie Washington, a man who had believed he was building a future with his wife, discovered he had nothing left but the clothes on his back and a small, dusty storage facility she had deemed a worthless hobby. That night, he didn't call an Uber. He walked the 4 miles in the pouring rain to Kay's secure storage. He used his master key to open Unit 218, a 10 by 20-foot metal box, and collapsed onto the cold concrete floor. The smell of dust and dry metal was the only comfort he had. He lay there, shivering and broken, as the storm raged outside, a perfect mirror for the tempest that had just torn his life apart. The first few weeks were a blur of grim survival. Kyrie operated in a state of strategic numbness. There was no time for rage, no space for the crushing weight of grief. There was only the next logical step. His first call was to a lawyer, a man named David Chen he'd been referred to by one of his longtime storage clients. They met in a small, cramped office downtown, the air thick with the smell of old paper and stale coffee. The meeting cost Kyrie $500, paid from the emergency cash he kept in his office safe, a fund that now totaled a meager 2,143 euros. David, a sharp, empathetic man in his 50s, listened patiently as Kyrie recounted the events, his voice a low monotone. He reviewed the post-nuptial agreement Kyrie had managed to get a copy of. "It's ironclad, Kyrie," David said, his expression grim. "She had a top-tier firm draft this. Every asset acquired during the marriage, including the appreciation of premarital assets, was funneled into her name. The house, the savings, the truck. She planned this meticulously." He explained that fighting it would be an uphill battle, requiring a retainer of at least $30,000 and months, if not years, of litigation. "Frankly," David concluded, "it's money you don't have, and the odds of winning are slim to none. She outplayed you." The words should have been devastating, but instead they were clarifying. Kyrie felt a strange sense of release. He was not going to waste his time, or his last remaining dollars, fighting a war that was already lost. He was not going to give Latrice the satisfaction of watching him flail and struggle. He looked at David and nodded. "Okay," he said, the single word holding a universe of decision. "Then we don't fight. We let it go." David looked surprised. "Just like that?" "Just like that," Kyrie confirmed. "She can have the past. I'm going to build the future." That decision became his North Star. He moved into the small, windowless office attached to his storage facility. It was 10 feet by 12 feet, with a desk, a chair, and a small bathroom. He bought a $150 air mattress from Walmart and a $40 microwave. His diet consisted of instant ramen, bought in bulk for $12 a case, and coffee from a cheap Mr. Coffee machine. He showered at a nearby 24-hour gym where he got a membership for $19.99 a month. He sold his father's briefcase and his ruined record collection to a pawn shop for a combined $450. Every penny was funneled back into his one remaining asset, the business Latrice had despised. He started by observing. For days he sat in his office watching the endless stream of semi-trucks on the I-240 loop that ran behind his property. He saw the drivers, tired and transient, pulling into truck stops for their mandatory rest periods. He saw a problem. Where did they store their personal effects? What about small business owners who used their trucks for hauling but needed a secure place to hold inventory between runs? An idea began to form. He wasn't just in the storage business, he was in the logistics business. He used $500 of his remaining cash to hire a freelance web developer to build a professional website and create a new brand. Kay's secure storage was too small, too personal. It needed to sound bigger, more official. They landed on Truck Stop Express Secure Hub and Hold. The name was perfect. It was direct, professional, and spoke to his new target audience. He designed a new service, a monthly subscription model for truckers that gave them 24/7 access to a secure, climate-controlled storage locker, a clean shower, and a mailing address all in one package, starting at $99 a month. It was a simple, elegant solution to a problem no one else was addressing. He spent another $300 on targeted Facebook ads aimed at trucking forums and logistics groups. He was playing the long game, a game Latrice had never had the patience for. He was planting seeds in scorched earth, armed with nothing but a good idea and the grim determination of a man with nothing left to lose. The next 18 months were a testament to the power of relentless, focused work. Kyrie lived and breathed Truck Stop Express. His world shrank to the chain-link fence perimeter of his 3-acre lot and the glowing screen of his 5-year-old Dell laptop. The first month, he signed up only 3 drivers. It was a meager $297 in new revenue, but to Kyrie, it felt like $1 million. It was proof of concept. He treated those first 3 clients like royalty. He met them personally, walked them through the facility, and gave them his personal cell number. Word of mouth began to spread in the tight-knit trucking community. By the 3rd month, he had 30 active subscribers. The $3,000 in recurring monthly revenue was enough to cover his operating costs and allow him to stop eating ramen every single night. He hired his first employee, a man named Marcus Holloway. Marcus was a 62-year-old black man with a radiant, kind face and 30 years of experience as a logistics manager for a major shipping company before being downsized. Kyrie couldn't afford a large salary, so he offered Marcus a modest wage of $18 an hour, plus a 5% stake in the company. "I can't pay you what you're worth right now, Marcus," Kyrie told him during the interview in his cramped office. "But I can offer you a piece of what we're going to build. I believe in this." Marcus, who had been dismissed by younger hiring managers at a dozen other companies, saw the fire in Kyrie's eyes. He saw the cot in the corner. He saw the dedication. He shook Kyrie's hand and said, "Son, let's get to work." Marcus was a force multiplier. He streamlined their check-in process, implemented an inventory management system for clients with larger storage needs, and used his old contacts to bring in 2 small commercial accounts, instantly doubling their monthly revenue. They worked side by side, often late into the night, fueled by cheap coffee and a shared vision. They celebrated victories with a $20 pizza from a local shop on Lamar Avenue. They painted the office themselves, a calm, professional gray, and bought 2 new ergonomic chairs for $300, a major investment at the time. 6 months in, they secured a small business administration loan for $50,000. It felt like an astronomical sum. They didn't spend it on fancy equipment or executive perks. They invested every dollar back into the infrastructure. They upgraded the security system with new high-definition cameras and a keycard access gate, a $15,000 expense. They paved the entire lot for another $20,000, eliminating the dust and mud that had plagued the facility. They spent $10,000 on a marketing push, creating professional brochures and attending a regional trucking convention in Nashville. At that convention, Kyrie stood for 10 hours a day in a small 10 by 10 booth, pitching his service to anyone who would listen. He wasn't a slick salesman. He was just a man who deeply understood his customers' problems because he had lived a version of them himself. He spoke about security, reliability, and respect. On the last day of the convention, a woman in a sharp suit approached his booth. Her name was Anjali Sharma, and she was a mid-level executive in FedEx's Logistics and Acquisitions division, headquartered right there in Memphis. She was intrigued by his business model. She took a brochure and gave him her card. "This is a very interesting niche, Mr. Washington," she said. "Very interesting." Kyrie had no idea that this quiet 5-minute conversation was a spark landing on a field of dry tinder. A year after his life was thrown onto the lawn, Truck Stop Express had grown to 150 subscribers and was generating over $20,000 in monthly revenue. They had expanded, leasing a second, smaller property near the airport. Kyrie had moved out of the office and into a small, clean, one-bedroom apartment in Midtown, which cost him $950 a month. It was modest, but it was his. He bought a used 2012 Toyota Camry with 187,000 miles on it for $6,000 in cash. He was building slowly, deliberately, brick by brick. He never checked Latrice's social media. He never asked mutual friends about her. He starved the past of his attention, and in doing so, he allowed his future to flourish. The quiet satisfaction of his new life was a balm on the old wounds. But he had no idea what was coming. The seeds he had planted were about to grow into a forest, and the sound of their growth would be heard far beyond the fences of his small storage lot. What do you think is more powerful for success? A brilliant idea or unstoppable hard work? Kyrie had both, but which one do you think truly turned his life around? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's discuss what it really takes to build something from nothing. The call from Anjali Sharma came on a Tuesday morning in August of 2025. Kyrie was on a ladder, changing a faulty light bulb in one of the storage corridors, when his phone buzzed. He almost ignored it, but he saw the FedEx corporate number on the screen. He climbed down, wiped his dusty hands on his jeans, and answered. "This is Kyrie Washington." "Mr. Washington, Anjali Sharma. We met at the Nashville convention last year," she said, her voice warm and professional. "I've been following your company's growth. It's impressive. My team and I would like to schedule a meeting to discuss a potential strategic partnership. Are you available to come to our headquarters next week?" Kyrie felt a jolt of adrenaline. He remained calm, his voice steady. "I am. Send me the details." He hung up the phone and looked at Marcus, who was watching him from the end of the hall. "That was FedEx," Kyrie said, a slow smile spreading across his face. The initial meeting led to another, and then another. Kyrie and Marcus found themselves in sleek, glass-walled conference rooms, presenting their growth metrics and operational model to teams of executives in expensive suits. Kyrie was never intimidated. He knew his business inside and out. He spoke with the quiet confidence of a man who had built every inch of what he was presenting. The FedEx team was impressed not just by the numbers, but by the philosophy behind Truck Stop Express, the focus on serving the underserved backbone of the American economy. These strategic partnership discussions quickly evolved into acquisition talks. The initial offer was a staggering $50 million. Kyrie, guided by a new corporate lawyer he'd hired, calmly countered. He knew his company's value was not just in its current revenue, but in its scalability. His model could be replicated at truck stops across the country, a turnkey solution for a massive built-in market. The negotiations went on for 2 months. Finally, they arrived at a number that made Kyrie's hands tremble slightly when he saw it on the term sheet. It was a number so large it seemed fictional. FedEx was acquiring Truck Stop Express for $1.4 billion, a valuation based on a massive national rollout. As part of the deal, Kyrie would retain a significant equity stake in the new subsidiary and stay on to lead the expansion. The signing was scheduled for October 28, 2025. It wasn't to be a quiet affair in a boardroom. FedEx wanted to make a splash, announcing their innovative move into a new market sector. They arranged for the final signing to happen live on Bloomberg Television, broadcast from a studio in New York City. FedEx flew Kyrie out first class, a ticket that cost over $2,000. They put him up in a suite at the Four Seasons, where a single night cost more than his first 6 months of rent. The morning of the signing, a stylist came to his room with a selection of suits. He chose a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit in a deep charcoal gray, a $3,500 garment that felt like armor. As he looked at himself in the mirror, he saw a man transformed. His deep brown skin glowed under the soft hotel lighting. His locks were neatly styled, and his eyes held a calm, steady resolve. He was a long way from the man shivering on a concrete floor. He was still the same person, but now the world was ready to see him as he saw himself. October 28, 2025, 10:30 a.m., Eastern Standard Time. In the Bloomberg studio high above Manhattan, the air was cool and controlled. A constellation of bright studio lights shone down on a heavy mahogany table. Kyrie sat on one side, the picture of still, signing pen composure. Beside him sat the CEO of FedEx, a man in his late 60s with a warm smile and sharp eyes. Cameras, silent and robotic, glided around them. The host of the program was speaking, her voice a smooth, authoritative hum, but Kyrie barely heard her. He was focused on the document in front of him, a thick stack of pages that represented 18 months of sleepless nights and relentless effort. At that exact moment, 2,000 miles away in Memphis, Tennessee, Latrice was in the living room of her $1.2 million home. She was bored. Her marketing job, which had once seemed so glamorous, now felt like a gilded cage. The thrill of her freedom had long since faded, replaced by the low-grade anxiety of maintaining a lifestyle she couldn't truly afford. The $90,000 she had taken was nearly gone, bled away by the $5,800 monthly mortgage, the $580 BMW lease, and a steady diet of designer clothes and expensive dinners. She was flipping through channels on her 85-inch Samsung Frame TV, a $4,000 purchase from a few months back. She paused on Bloomberg, drawn in by the familiar FedEx logo on the screen. She saw the CEO, and then her eyes shifted to the man beside him. Her breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be. The man on the screen was poised, confident, radiating a quiet power she had never seen before. But it was him. It was Kyrie. His locks were longer, his face was a little leaner, but it was undeniably him. Her mind struggled to process the scene. What was he doing there? In a $3,500 suit? On national television? The host's voice cut through her confusion. An incredible story of innovation. Mr. Kyrie Washington, founder of Truck Stop Express, started his company just 18 months ago with next to nothing. Latrice felt a cold dread seep into her bones. Truck Stop Express? She vaguely remembered him talking about some idea for truckers, an idea she had dismissed as another one of his small dreams. Then, the FedEx CEO spoke. "We are thrilled to announce that FedEx is acquiring Truck Stop Express in a deal valued at $1.4 billion. We believe Mr. Washington's model will revolutionize logistics services for the entire shipping industry. $1.4 billion. The number hung in the air of her silent, cavernous living room. The remote control slipped from her numb fingers and clattered onto the marble floor. Her face went completely white. She watched, frozen, as Kyrie picked up a heavy, expensive-looking pen. He didn't smile. He didn't look triumphant. He simply looked at the camera with a calm, unreadable expression and signed his name on the final page. The camera zoomed in for a close-up of his hand, the same hand that had fixed her garbage disposal, planted her garden, and held hers for years, as it sealed the deal that irrevocably changed his life, and in doing so, exposed the catastrophic scale of her own miscalculation. In that moment, she wasn't just a woman who had left her husband. She was the woman who had thrown $1 billion out onto the lawn in the rain. Her world didn't just crack, it atomized. The moment the broadcast ended, Latrice snatched her iPhone 16 off the table, her hands shaking so badly she could barely unlock it. Her finger hovered over Kyrie's contact name, a contact she hadn't touched in 18 months. She pressed call. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. His voice was the same, calm and steady. "You've reached Kyrie Washington. Please leave a message." She didn't leave one. She hung up and called again, and again, and again. Her panic mounted with each unanswered ring. She started texting, her thumbs flying across the screen in a frantic, misspelled jumble. 10:47 a.m. "Kyrie? Was that you on TV?" 10:49 a.m. "I can't believe it. $1 billion? Call me." 10:55 a.m. "Baby, we're rich. I knew you could do it. We need to talk." In New York, Kyrie felt his phone vibrating in his suit pocket. He glanced at the screen during a commercial break. He saw her name, followed by a cascade of notifications. Latrice, 8 missed calls. Latrice, 12 new messages. He felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a profound and quiet distance. He put the phone back in his pocket and turned his attention back to the FedEx CEO, who was congratulating him. He did not check the messages. He did not answer the calls. He simply let them accumulate, a digital record of her spiraling desperation. Back in Memphis, Latrice's frantic energy curdled into rage, then pleading. She left her first voicemail at 11:15 a.m. "Kyrie, it's me, Latrice. I saw the news. Congratulations. I'm just so proud of you. Of us. Call me back, okay?" Her voice was strained, unnaturally sweet. By 1:30 p.m., after another dozen unanswered calls, her tone had shifted. "Kyrie, why aren't you answering your phone? This is ridiculous. You can't just ignore me. I was with you when you had nothing. I supported you. This is our money. You know that. You owe me." At 4:00 p.m., the pleading began. "Baby, please, please, just call me. I made a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking clearly. I love you. I've always loved you. We can fix this. We can have everything we ever wanted." Her last call of the day came at 9:47 p.m. By then, he had received 31 missed calls from her number. This time, the voicemail was just the sound of her, weeping. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but the choked, hopeless sound of someone whose entire world had crumbled to dust, a sound that conveyed the full, crushing weight of her regret. Kyrie was at a celebratory dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Manhattan with his new partners. He saw the final missed call notification. He powered his phone off completely and placed it beside his plate. He then raised his glass of sparkling water to Marcus, who was sitting across from him, his eyes shining with pride. "To the future, Marcus," Kyrie said. "To building things that last." The consequences for Latrice cascaded through her life with brutal efficiency, each one a direct result of her own choices. The first to go was her social standing. Her circle of friends, the ones who had clinked champagne glasses with her and congratulated her on trading up, now looked at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. The whispers followed her through the aisles of the upscale grocery store and across the tennis courts at the country club. She became a cautionary tale, a punchline in conversations held in rooms she was no longer invited into. The story of the woman who kicked out her billionaire husband was just too delicious for the Memphis elite to resist. The second, and more pressing consequence was financial. The life she had stolen was built on a foundation of his steady, reliable income supplementing her own. Without it, the cracks began to show immediately. The $90,000 evaporated. She fell behind on the massive mortgage for the East Memphis house. Then she missed a payment on the $43,000 BMW. Foreclosure notices and repossession warnings began arriving in the mail. Stark white envelopes mixed in with her glossy fashion magazines. Within 6 months of Kyrie's deal, a for sale sign was staked into the same manicured lawn where she had thrown his life away. She was forced to sell the house for $1.1 million, less than its market value, just to escape from under the debt. After paying off the mortgage and the real estate commissions, she was left with a little over $100,000. A fraction of what she had thrown away. The third consequence was familial. Her own mother, a proud, church-going woman who had always been quietly fond of Kyrie, was mortified. She called Kyrie a week after the news broke. "Kyrie, this is Eleanor," she said, her voice heavy with shame. "I have no words for what my daughter did to you. I am so sorry. I always knew you were a good man. A man of character." She paused, then continued, She sent you a card, a congratulations card. I told her not to, that you deserved your peace, but she insisted. I'm forwarding it to your old business address. You don't have to read it. I wanted you to know that not everyone in this family lost their mind." The card arrived a few days later, a thick, cream-colored envelope with Latrice's elegant, looping handwriting on the front. Kyrie looked at it for a long moment. He saw not an olive branch, but a final, desperate attempt to claim a piece of a life she had willingly abandoned. He didn't open it. He placed it on a bookshelf in his new office at the global headquarters of Truck Stop Express, a gleaming glass tower in downtown Memphis. It sat there, a silent monument to a past he had fully and finally moved beyond. Her downfall was complete. Not because he had orchestrated it, but because her own character had authored it, line by devastating line. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to cut someone out of your life for your own peace and well-being? It's a hard decision, but sometimes it's the only way to move forward. Share your thoughts on when it's necessary to close a door for good in the comments. 2 years after the signing, life looked very different for Kyrie Washington. He didn't live in a sprawling mansion or drive a fleet of exotic cars. He had purchased a quiet, elegant home in the Harbortown neighborhood, a 3-bedroom house with a wide porch that overlooked the Mississippi River. The house had cost him $950,000, a fraction of what he could afford, but it was all he needed. It was a place of peace, filled with warm light, and the books he finally had time to read. His true wealth was being poured back into the city that had shaped him. He had established the Memphis Logistics Guild, a nonprofit trade school dedicated to training displaced workers for high-demand jobs in the logistics industry. He'd funded it with an initial endowment of $20 million. The school offered free tuition, certifications, and job placement services. Its campus was a state-of-the-art facility built in a redeveloped warehouse district, a beacon of hope in a neighborhood that needed it. He spent most of his days there, not in a corner office, but walking the halls, talking to students, and listening to their stories. He found a deeper satisfaction in seeing a single mother get her forklift certification and a living wage job than he ever had in seeing his company's stock price rise. He had reconnected with Marcus, who had retired comfortably with the millions he'd made from his 5% stake in the company. They met for lunch every Friday at a small, family-owned barbecue joint on Beale Street, their conversation easy and familiar. Kyrie was still at the helm of Truck Stop Express, guiding its national expansion, but he had built a strong team that allowed him to have a life outside of work. On a warm evening in October, he was on the river. He had bought a small 25-foot sailboat he'd named the Resilience. It was not a yacht. It was a simple, elegant vessel that required skill and attention to sail. As the sun set, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and purple, he guided the boat through the calm water. The gentle breeze was cool on his face, his luminous, deep brown skin catching the last rays of light. He thought, briefly, of the unopened card still sitting on his bookshelf. He felt no anger, no resentment, only a quiet sense of gratitude for the journey. He had forgiven Latrice long ago, not for her sake, but for his. Forgiveness was the act of untethering his own ship from the anchor of a painful past, allowing it to sail freely into the open water of the future. He realized then that true wealth was never about the size of a bank account or the value of a deal. It wasn't something that could be taken or given. True wealth was character. It was the resilience to withstand the storm, the integrity to build something of value, and the wisdom to find peace in the quiet harbor of a life well lived. It was the only asset that truly mattered, the only one that could never be thrown out on the lawn. Our lives are defined not by what happens to us, but by how we respond. Kyrie chose to build instead of break, to look forward instead of back. What is one small step you can take today to start building your own brighter future? Share your commitment in the comments below, and let's build a community of resilience together.